I was watching a Grungeon Master video recently, specifically about the long-term effects of permanent magical construction on a societal level. It was really interesting, and I can see his point. There are specific parts of his arguments I agree with, and certain points I disagree with. But it made me think about the entire idea of permanency in a game setting. You know, how we think about it and how it doesn't really exist. We tend to think of permanency on a lifetime scale, for the most part. I mean, there's obvious caveats to that, like monuments made of stone, etc. But mostly we think of something that we think of as permanent, lasting 100 years or less. More than our lifetime. Moving to a permanent home, something being on your permanent record, having a permanent scar. But these things aren't forever. They only last as long as we do as individuals. A new house will last 50 years before it's torn down or falls apart on its own and is unlivable. The scar isn't there anymore on your skin when all that's left of you is your bones. We all know about decay in some form or another. So let me scroll this down. Machines wear out over time, wood rots, food spoils, batteries won't hold a charge anymore, bread gets moldy, your bag of chips goes stale. Even wine decays into vinegar. Ionizing radiation is caused by radioactive elements slowly decaying into other slightly less radioactive elements over the course of millions of years. Everything decays or rots in some way, shape, or form in our modern real world. Now they're even finding plastics are being broken down into constituent chemicals by newly evolved microorganisms and enzymes. Even if we think about something as permanent, nothing lasts forever. So in our fantasy worlds, in our games, how long does magic last? What happens when it starts to decay? Like, let's say a teleportation circle that's been made permanent. Put a lot of work into it. They had to cast the spell every day in the same spot with the same cost for a year. Whole year. That's supposed to be permanent. But, after it falls out of use, out of regular use, regular maintenance, how long does it take before the stone that it's carved into starts to chip? Or cracks from the ground underneath it, shifting? Does that make it just turn off and stop working altogether? Could it be repaired if it's started to be maintained again? Maybe the damage is minimal, so it works intermittently. Like there's a percentage chance it'll work, there's a percentage chance it'll send you to the wrong place, if nobody's been taking care of it for 500 years or so. Alternatively, after nobody's been maintaining it for 500 years, what if the place it's supposed to send you to isn't there anymore? What if the place it's trying to send you is at the bottom of a lake or the ocean, or buried under a landslide? But the circle's still intact and still active. Would you get teleported there anyway, either to drown or to suffocate under tons of rubble? When you're world building, especially if your world has a long past history, where there's a good chance your players could find ancient ruins, maybe we should say magic doesn't quite work the way it's supposed to anymore. How about the D&D spell Mighty Fortress? A whole castle, 100 unseen servants, food for 100 people every day. It's a lot of work to make something like that permanent. It has to be recast in the same spot every week for a whole year. So 52 castings. And it's an 8th level spell with a casting cost of a diamond worth 500 gold pieces. If somebody's making one of these permanent, they're not messing around. The unseen servants will obey the commands of anyone the caster designates, potentially including the descendants of whoever is supposed to live there, depending on how the caster words things. For a high-level party, a building like this is a huge thing. What happens after 500 years? Or 1,000? I mean, yeah, it's created by magic and it contains magic, but it's still physically just a stone building. Maybe the borders change. Maybe one dynasty falls and another one rises. Maybe it's left to ruin and nearby peasants start pulling out chunks of stone to use in their houses and their fences. Do bits and pieces of the magic go with the missing stones? Do the unseen servants start glitching and making mistakes? You know, maybe as the magic gets old, it can't make the food properly anymore, and you get a feast that's starting to spoil. What if after 500 years the party has no living descendants anymore? Does the magic castle just shut down completely? Or does it scan whoever explores the ruins until it finds someone who matches the original occupants in some way? Or just assume that whoever's there is supposed to be there? Maybe the unseen servants go a little insane and start trying to defend the castle against intruders after so long with no living interaction. So everyone local just thinks the ruined castle is haunted. The whole system of magic in D&D has a way to make this work. Necrotic damage. It doesn't have to be caused by a necromancy spell. What if it's just what happens when magic has gone past its expiry date? It can only do certain things anymore. When things have started to go off, to spoil, when the magic has started to rot. What if a cursed magic item wasn't actually cursed by anyone or created to carry a curse? What if it's just past its warranty so the magic inside of it isn't quite the same as it used to be? We can of course tie this into my last video where I mentioned forgotten gods. What if it's not the age of the magic so much as it is the magic being dormant for too long and starting to get rancid after however many 100 years being closed in its proverbial Tupperware? Let's say forgotten god from hundreds of generations ago is suddenly rediscovered by a party of adventurers. Gods being empowered by memory and faith and being composed entirely of personified magical energy. What happens when it wakes up and the milk has gone sour? As with any magic ancient enough to fall into decay, it might be a slightly twisted and decidedly unpleasant version of what it originally was. For a god, in the case of a god, that would be catastrophic. For a building, it would be haunted. For a magic item, it would be cursed. There could be tons of mechanical upshots for this kind of thing. Maybe potions only last a few months before they go bad. Maybe a magic arrow only lasts a few years. All this is a perspective. It's a point of view that gives you as a world builder, as a DM, a reason why there are cursed items and vials of poison and haunted ruins without there being a need, or without there needing to be factions of evil wizards creating these things maliciously. Things just go bad after a while. And they have to be replaced. Things that were intended to be permanent or thought of as permanent might not be if nobody maintains them. So now that we've established how magic might be able to rot. Remember how things tend to work in the real world. Yes, there's decay, but nature tends to operate in cycles. Tides go in and out due to lunar gravity. Predators die, their bodies decay back into the soil, fertilizing the growth of plants that feed the herbivores. Keeps changing. Milankovitch cycles dealing with obliquity, precession, and eccentricity of Earth's orbit. They affect the advance and retreat of glaciers on scales of 20, 40, and 100,000 years. Everything else is cyclic. So why shouldn't magic work in cycles? Let's say the part of the cycle that a warlock draws from is just starting to go off. It's not quite past its expiry date yet, but it's getting close. Kind of like the pack of bologna in your fridge that you want to hope to get one more sandwich out of before you have to buy more. You know, that decays into necrotic energy. The end of the cycle is for curses, zombies, mummy rot. Once that finally decays, it feeds into the next stage of magical energy, starting with nature. Druid spells. They can draw energy from the fertility left after the necrotic decays into the natural. I'm not going to go through all the different spell types and casters, but we could put radiant magic, so clerics and paladins, at the opposite side of the circle from necromancy. Then all the elemental magics, the illusions, abjuration, whatever, they can fit in the circle somewhere between the others. Like I said earlier, this just seems like a really fun point of view to work for world building and maybe figure out a decay cycle for magic. Maybe that can give you as a DM some idea of what a permanent permanent smell, that'd be terrible. But it can give you some idea of what a permanent spell might decay into over hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of years, if nobody maintains it. Now, hopefully the half dozen or so of you who still enjoy these videos, I'm going to upload a new video every Sunday regardless. And it's not like I have anything else going on right now, so I'll keep doing it. But what ideas do you guys have? Where would you put the different kinds of magic in the whole decay cycle thing? In conclusion, if you've got anything out of this, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.